The Shar HaAvoda, Rabbeinu Yonah tells us that the first step in a person's growth is that he has to know his own worth. He has to know his value. And if he knows his value, then he transcends, then he rises. As he understands that his value increases, and he becomes a more refined person. We don't have a definition. A more refined person, a more mirumam, a more elevated person. And Rabbeinu Yonah talks about always pursuing that elevated status. The question is, where do you get that status from? Where does that value come from? And the first place where value comes from is what we might call utilitarian value. That means that a person can do certain things and they have value because they have function. In the olden days, that was how a person was assessed in the slave market. They had value in a slave world. And if somebody damaged somebody else, chas v'shalom, so the reduction in value was estimated based on the reduction of value in the slave market. A person had value that was based on their function, on their able to be utilized. But the Rabbeinu Yonah speaks also about the idea that there's additional value that comes from avosav, our forefathers. I don't know how many people feel connected enough to be able to say that my value is increased because I was saved from Mitzrayim. I am privileged to be in that select group of those who Hashem saw fit to save them from Mitzrayim. So this is an example of where what Rabbeinu Yonah refers to as Mailas Avosav. You have a certain increase of value because not only of who you are and the capacities that you have, but also because your forefathers, your ancestors, were chosen, and you are the product of that choice that Hashem made. So you already can see that the more choice there is in the system, the more value there is. Choice is a way of demonstrating of increased value. So you have that Hashem chose our ancestors. Hashem is actively involved in our lives. All of those things increase value. But behind the story, there's a core value, and that is that a person has the ability to draw close to Hashem. So the way that Derech Hashem sets it up is that Hashem is the absolute good. And therefore, to give us maximum good, he gives us the ability to be davek, to be close to him. By giving us that ability, he is giving us the ultimate value. If you ask why does a person have value, it is because he is able to be davek. He has the capacity to choose to be close to Hashem. And that capacity makes the person valuable. as the person exercises that choice, their value goes up because they are now more davek in Hashem. And the more davek in Hashem, the more we are absolutely valuable, because the ultimate value is Hashem, because He is the absolute good. So we have a system where you can assess the value of a person based on, number one, or the opening value, which is their capacity to be davek in Hashem. Number two is the exercise of that capacity in coming closer to Hashem. So any other definition of what is a person worth is not going to be an absolute definition. And here we have an absolute definition, and that is that the more a person is clinging to Hashem, which means turning to Him with our requests, which means recognizing that He is the only source, which means fulfilling the desire to fulfill His will. So anything that gives us additional closeness to Hashem increases our value. And we need to be able to recognize that. We need to recognize that in ourselves and recognize it as in others. The news is, excuse me, that unless a person specifically chooses not to be davek in Hashem, then the person's value would go down, I suppose, to zero. But a person who still has the capacity to choose to be close to Hashem has this amazing amount of value. And very often people get caught up trying to do the right thing or avoid doing the wrong thing. When they're asked why, they might say because of reward, punishment. They might say they might have guilt feelings, but they might not say because I would be ashamed to do it given my lofty status and my great value. And that is what Rabbeinu Yonah says a person needs to be able to connect with, that I am an exalted person, a person who has the ability to be davek in Hashem, and there are things, therefore, that are beneath me, not just because they're beneath my station in life. They're beneath me because they are beneath my value. Because my value is determined based on my closeness to my being davek in Hashem. Now, this is a complex system that has a certain core simplicity to it. The core simplicity is set out in the second parak of Derech Hashem, where he says that you need to know that Hashem is the Shlemus Hatov. Hashlemus Ha'amiti. HaMeshulol Mikol HaChesronos. The absolute good, without any negative side. And therefore, Hashem, in giving us the ability to cling to Him, is giving us the absolute value of the absolute good. So if you hold on to that core reality and you ask, what am I worth? The answer has to be, I'm worth fortunes, because I have the ability to be connected to the absolute good. And maybe even I've exercised some of that capacity in whatever way that I have. I've looked forward to his malchus. I've said sincerely, Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach. I'm looking forward to the absolute good being proclaimed and known in the world. I've said Aleinu and yearned for his good to be known in the world and for everyone to acknowledge his good. When a person says Aleinu, he doesn't often realize that he is now extremely valuable. He's increased his value because he's affirmed his desire for Hashem to be manifest in the world. Why would he want Hashem to be manifest in the world? Because he is aligned with this desire of Hashem that we should be connected to his absolute goodness. Hashem wants that for us, and we want that for us. And we declare our desire for Hashem's goodness to be and perfection to be known in the world. If Hashem's goodness and perfection is known in the world, there wouldn't be a question about who's the king. Nobody would ask, who should be the king? Once they're exposed to Hashem's absolute goodness and perfection, there's no question about who should be the king. There's only one king that I would ever want. And that's L'sakin Olam B'malchus Shakai. So there is a process that some people unfortunately substitute for what their value is. My value is that I'm a soldier, or my value is that I'm a survivor, or my value is that I have certain capacities. My value is that I have a lot of followers. And every other definition of value disappears once you have this fundamental tool in your toolbox. My value is my capacity to cling to Hashem, who is the absolute good. And when you're sitting at the Seder and you're acknowledging that Hashem did miracles for my ancestors, what you're really saying is that he stepped out into the world, he made himself known in the world so that we could come closer to him, so that we could be dovek in him. What a gift. Because we've talked now about the dvekus, the clinging that comes from our choices. But there's another source of that clinging, which comes from Hashem drawing us close. V'keiravtonu malkeinu la'avodasecha. That you are drawing us close. So we have our choices in drawing close to Hashem that increases our value. And we have Hashem drawing us close through the miracles of Yetzias Mitzrayim, through the giving of the Torah, through the allowing for the building of the Beis Hamikdash, for allowing us to come close in the avoda towards him, allowing us to daven to him. So the cycle that we should be thinking about is all of the things that are contributing to our tremendous value all the time, both from our choices, which the fancy language is called Israusa dilatata, sort of an awakening of closeness that comes from us, and the Israusa dila'ela, the awakening of that closeness that comes from Hashem, v'keiravtonu malkeinu la'avodasecha, that you drew us close. And every time we're thinking about that, the good news is not simply that we have mitzvos to do, which of course it is, but that those mitzvos and those opportunities and that closeness is what gives us our tremendous value. Why is a person precious? Why is he valuable? Because of his capacity to be davek in Hashem. The more the person recognizes that capacity, the greater is his value.